Alrighty, thanks Sean, and thanks everyone for having me out here to discuss our work. As she mentioned, I work for the University of Florida over in Southeast Florida, Davie, Fort Lauderdale area. But we've set up a pretty widespread program to monitor native and non-native reptiles, amphibians, and mammals. So a lot of you probably know the situation down here. We have a really nice climate and nice ports, so lots of reptiles come in here, are introduced, and a good chunk of those become established, more so than anywhere else in the country. So what we want to do when that happens is try to catch that early. And so what we're showing here is the invasion curve, and it shows you how management is affected by the timeline of invasion. So early on, you've got a chance at eradicating whatever comes in and is introduced. But as time goes on and the species begins to cover more area and the population grows, it becomes highly unlikely to eradicate anything, and it takes a lot more money, and you're looking more at like long-term management, and it's just, anyway, the point is you want to catch it early. So EIRAMMP was kind of designed to address some of this. It's a long-term monitoring program, and the idea is to find new things so that we can respond rapidly. So we basically spread out, we cover a lot of different areas, and we keep track of everything that we see. We primarily are road cruising and doing call surveys for amphibians and visual encounter surveys for some smaller things. And we're looking for new populations of species that were not here previously, as well as looking at the status of species that are already here. So say the Burmese python, that was kind of how this started, was the Burmese python. So, 2010, we're seeing pythons, up to here. 2012 up to here, where are they and how is that changing? And so then we're synthesizing that into an adaptive management framework. So as I mentioned, we do a lot of road cruising. This is a map of most of our routes here. The ones in red are routes with pythons, and the ones in blue are routes without. So we record our tracks on a GPS and take waypoints anytime we see a reptile, amphibian, or mammal. And this allows us to calculate effort, which is usually in the form of an encounter rate. So, whatever species per hour or per kilometer. And so that's something we can measure and compare. So just some examples of what we see, cricket frogs, barking tree frogs. So these are the good guys, the native amphibians. And these are things we would detect through 5 minutes of just listening for their calls or visually searching for them at checkpoints along our routes. And then these are some more of the good guys, depending on your opinion of snakes, I guess. But they're native, so that's good. And, I'm a snake person, so I love seeing these things. Corn snake, coral snake in the bottom left, mangrove water snake, top left, and eastern diamondback rattlesnake, top right. So just some examples. But then kind of the point is to also see some of these Burmese pythons or any other non-native species. And so fortunately these are not difficult to detect when they're on the road, but that's only so often. Okay, so this is kind of a busy graph, so I'll kind of try to tease it apart a little and explain it. The green bars are our catch per unit effort from our EIRAMMP surveys. So this is how many pythons per kilometer have we been observing. The multicolored bars they're aggregates of data from state and federal sources, and it's total number of pythons removed during those years. So you can see there is some reflection between the two data sets, and it seems like the trends kind of hold true for the most part. 2010 is an interesting year because that's when the big freeze was, so a lot of pythons were affected by that. In fact, we had radio-telemetered snakes out, and 9 out of 10 of them died during that freeze, so pretty substantial. And so this is an example of what we can do with that data that's meaningful. So what we have here, we've got the pythons are the red bars, and then mammals are the blue bars. So as the pythons are being seen less frequently, you see the mammals start to creep up. And then as you start seeing more pythons, the mammals begin to decline again. And there's a lot of variation in these data, so we're just generating hypotheses with this, but fortunately some people have tested these pretty well. And I'll get to that in a second. This is just another graph showing routes with pythons. We see fewer mammals than routes without pythons, just as a general trend. And this is just the number of routes where we have seen pythons through time. So it's increasing. And it's an interesting argument that's made a lot of the time by people who really like snakes and the pet trade. And I mean, I keep snakes myself. I'm not against that, but they always say part of the Everglades there really aren't that many to speak of. But we happen to see more mammals on routes with cats, probably just by coincidence. But so we were looking at this. I gave a talk in Big Cypress not too long ago, and so I came up with this for Big Cypress, and it just again shows the trend that on the routes with pythons we're seeing fewer mammals than the routes without pythons. Okay, so I mentioned people had kind of tested these hypotheses a little more. One of the big papers that came out was Mike Dorcas and a bunch of other folks published a really big paper showing, just these massive declines in mammal populations, like over 90% of several like mesomammals, raccoons, possums, rabbits. And so to follow up on that, Bob McCleary did a study radio tracking rabbits in Everglades National Park. He translocated them to the national park because you can't really find them in the national park anymore. And 77% of those rabbits were eaten by pythons. So, there's a lot of debate. Are pythons really having an impact? And it seems really obvious to me. There's a lot of pythons out there. They have to eat something, and we know they eat mammals and birds from looking at their diet to begin with. So, just trying to reinforce that it's a real thing that's happening out there, and there are pretty marked declines. And the next big issue is tegus. And so we're trying to bring EIRAMMP, we're trying to spread it to Southwest Florida. We've been doing a lot in Southeast Florida and kind of across the center, but we really want to start doing more in Southwest Florida. And tegus right now are a big deal on our side of the state. You can see that bottom red dot shows 836 records of tegus from Dade County, and that's the biggest population. There's another one up near Tampa with 147. And then, they pop up here and there from time to time. But we're starting to worry because this is just from last year. In this general area, there were 7 confirmed tegu sightings around here. And you might think, that's not a big deal. But if you look at this, in 2009 in Southeast Florida, there were only 13, and we're already in 2015 at, almost 650. So, when you look at that invasion curve at the beginning of the talk, and then you apply this to that, it's really important to catch these things early when you have some chance. Because now if you're looking at Southeast Florida, it's looking at long-term management. Maybe there's some distant hope of eradicating them, but in my opinion, probably not. So, we're in that point where we could act quickly and decisively and hopefully make a difference. And just to talk a little bit about the impacts of tegus, these are photos we got from a tegu on an alligator nest where we placed cameras. In their native range, tegus are major nest predators of sea turtles and crocodilians. So we put cameras on an alligator nest, and over the course of a couple weeks, several tegus came to the nest and raided all the eggs, ate the whole nest, and got some pretty fat and happy tegus. But I mean, obviously we're worried about gators and turtles, but they're also pretty close to American crocodiles, one of the hot spots for crocodile nesting, and their numbers are much, much lower, so we're concerned that they could move over there and really decimate that population. And so, you know, you always have all these scary stories of things that go wrong with invasive species, and I think it's good to highlight some of the things that can happen if you do apply yourself and you catch things early. So I'm just going through a couple examples here. These are panther chameleons, and we got a report to EIRAMMP, which many of you might be familiar with, but anyone can go on and report exotic wildlife that they found. And so we saw a report on EIRAMMP pop up, and we went out and like that same night, and we caught another one. And then over the course of the next couple weeks, we ended up with 6 that came out of there. And since then, you know, we've surveyed a little more and haven't seen anything else. So we're thinking we caught these before they established or became a problem. And you know, they're pretty benign. They're just chameleons and they eat bugs. But this is another example of something that we were able to get rid of quickly, relatively quickly. But this is a Nile crocodile that was outside Everglades National Park and then moved into Everglades National Park. And there were actually 3 of them that we know of that were introduced, and we were able to get rid of all of them. This one was the worst. This one was out there at least 2 years and seemed to have no trouble surviving out there. So we were really happy to get rid of that guy. I mean, all kinds of issues could come from that. So just trying to drive home the point that if you act quickly, there is a chance that you can get rid of things before they become too established. And then on top of the regular EIRAMMP surveys and everything we do, I mean, most of us that work together just love herping, and you know, we try to do everything we can. And Sean organized a herp Blitz here at Corkscrew. So we just came out here, and I see a lot of familiar faces from that, so you guys know what happened. But came out here and tried to document as many things as we can, and these were the results here. And you know, we have tentative plans to kind of look in the future in different seasons and see if we can document some more things, and hopefully no invasive critters, but you never know. So just kind of to wrap things up here, detection is the main problem. You know, at the beginning of that invasion curve, if you're seeing 10 animals, you know, how many have you not seen? In the case of pythons, they're almost never on or near roads. They spend the vast majority of their time away from roads. So if you actually see one, you know, you're pretty lucky. So we need to figure out better ways to find them so we can better remove all these things. Need to look a little more into the mammal trends in different areas and see how pythons or other species are affecting things as pythons' range expand. And then, like I said, we're trying to do more surveys in more places, and including Corkscrew. We have a route set up now, and that'll help us detect some of these things early and let us know when we need to get out there and try to get rid of something. And just all caps, because even in the short time that I've been in South Florida, I've just seen so many things go up the invasion curve quickly, and so it'd be sad to see more species establish themselves. So it's really critical to act just right when you see something. And that's all I got, so probably have time for questions.
Yep.